think it's a game? You think it's game? Y'all gon' make me lose my mind. Hey, yo, what's my name? Y'all gon' make me go all out. DMX. Y'all gon' make me act a fool. Hey, yo, what's my name? Y'all gon' make me lose my cool.
I tried so hard.
What y'all really want? What y'all really want?
But it doesn't even matter. Come on. I tried so hard.
What y'all really want?
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. Come on.
Boy, give me a sign. Dog, I meet bitches, the street bitches, slash, Cocoa Puff, sweet bitches, make you wanna eat bitches, but not me.
I tried so
I
hard.
fuck with these hoes from a distance. The instant they start to catch feelings, I start to. What is it you want from a? I gave you, you gave me. I played you, you played me.
And got so far. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to lose it all.
Welcome everybody to another edition of the Showcase Pod. I am Don Vega, always joined by the boss Chris Blackheart. We're back.
We are back.
Got over the episode with Buddy Romano.
Buddy was good, to say the least. I think that on that episode, on the recap on that, Buddy is not the same Buddy as we knew before.
You know, he's in a good place, so I was happy to see that.
I do, and
he's
if I'm not
happy.
mistaken, I think he has some new puppies.
Yeah, he did.
So
He
I
did get
thought
some
that
new
was
pups.
good.
We had Evie De La Rosa on. That was a great show as well. But today, we got a legend of New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer, WWF journeyman, Mr. John Callahan, the Sarge. Welcome to the Showcase Pod.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Chris Blackheart, we both go way back with Sarge. We got some questions, hopefully,
We're
today.
going to have questions. We're going to have story. But let's start at the beginning. John, when you were little John, what got you hooked?
I was never Little John. That just never happened. The wrestling bug caught me when I was 10 years old. I used to watch the old tapes, Capital Wrestling from Washington, and I watched George Steele put Manuel Soto on the mat, stomp his arm, and I thought, man, I want to be in that business. I want to do that. I want to be that guy in there.
You wanted to be the
And
guy that was
luckily,
getting stomped? Or?
I met Killer Kowalski, as also did you, Chris. And
It's not about me today. John, what was...
it took me on a trip that was just unbelievable that never would have happened if Walter was never around.
So, at what age did you find Walter Killer Kowalski? You were still a young pup, a young lad at that time, Sarge?
I was 1 year out of high school. In fact, the exact day that I graduated high school, 1 year later, I started at the Killer Kowalski School in Salem, Mass, up at the YMCA. He tried to talk me out of going into wrestling. He did everything he could to discourage me from getting into the ring. And as soon as I saw that ring, I knew this is where I needed to be.
So going back that first time you met Walter, him trying to get you not to join professional wrestling, not to join training. What were finally getting in? What were some of the other gentlemen that were with you? If there's any noticeable names that were in your class when you started.
But when I started, the guys who started with me were Danny Pataglio. He was Dan Petty. He worked in IWF. He worked out in California and up in Calgary. Butcher Hughes, who was a legend within New England and up in Canada. Lynn Swan. Lynn Holmes. He was Frank Savage. Frank went into WWF and then went down to Southeastern Wrestling down for Robert Fuller down in Alabama, and had a pretty good career down there. And then we had this fat guy named Huggy Bear. Oh my God, this guy was like 400 pounds. He could cartwheel, but that's about it. Never went anywhere. And Bob Wheeler was our trainer, along with Walter. And Bob Wheeler became the White Flash. And the reason why he did that was he wore a mask because he was going bald. Like, I wish I knew that because I'm going bald. And I should have wore a mask.
So how far along, once you started training with Walter, did you have your first match?
From the time I started, it was about 2 months. I had my very first match, and then it was a few months later that because the first match I had was taped for a show on NBC TV called Real People, and then 2 months later, I actually wrestled Dominic DeNucci, which I consider my first match, in Manchester Center, Vermont, which was November of 1979.
That's what we wanted. That was my question. I wasn't so, John, when did you actually start? Was it 1979, 1978?
I graduated high school in 1978, but I started wrestling in 1979. And, it was a good group of guys. We were very close. We were like brothers. We actually lived in an apartment inland and trained over in Salem. And, we were extremely close, always looking out for each other. Unfortunately, we're still kids, and we're going to do stupid things that kids do. And, Walter put up with a lot of it, but Walter treated us like we were his kids.
What are some of John? What are some of the biggest things you notice between the days of you breaking into the business and training with Walter, comparison to a lot of the guys that you see nowadays, especially having a hand on helping train some of the guys at the Showcase Center before, and even us, we learn all the time just sharing stories, and you sharing stories with us. What are some of the biggest differences that you could say from your time and now?
Well, the biggest difference is that back in my day, you got the time you had to go. Promoter would tell you, I need to get at least 7 or 8 minutes out of you. Okay. This is the finish. It's going to be a body slam and a pin. Okay. That's what you got. Now what guys do is they go from the lockup to the next move, to the next move, to the next. If I had to remember all that, I'd never remember it. I would just, you'd lose me at the lockup because I never would remember anything. Guys now flip around the ring like every move doesn't hurt. When I broke in, if you got body slammed, you got up and you didn't do another thing for at least the next 30 seconds to a minute to get that body slam over. The guy just picked up a 300-pound person and slammed them to the mat. In logical thinking, that hurts. That really hurts. But in today's thinking, oh, get up. What are you, a baby? Just get up and do the next thing.
So the guys definitely not sell the way that the old school veterans used to, and the believability of things have changed along the way.
Yeah, it's totally nuts. When I watch old tapes, I still watch the stuff from the 70s, and some of it, I see where, okay, in today's eyes, it wouldn't be, the thing that would really knock me down, but it did back then. But at the same time, when you got knocked down, you didn't get right back up and start swinging right away.
Mm-hmm.
You at least registered what just happened to you. You let the people know, that hurt. Oh, my God. That really stunned me. That really set me back a little bit. But today's thinking is that get right back up, like nothing happened, and just go to the next move.
Yeah.
John, and when it came, you had your first match. What was the journey from your first match going to your first opportunity in New York?
For my yeah, it's kind of my first match. If I go to the first match, actually being Dominic DiNucci, that was absolutely horrible. I can't even stress that enough. It was totally terrible. It was a matter of you had to go out there and listen to the veteran and let him guide the match. And if the veteran didn't guide the match, then the match was terrible. And that's exactly what I got. And as I started going along, I realized, you know what? I'm not going to listen to these guys anymore. I'm just going to do my own goddamn thing. And I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to start snatching somebody's leg. And I'm going to start grabbing their arm. And I'm going to start putting them in holds. And start doing what I know how to do, because these veterans don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that really was fine until I wrestled Chief Jay Strongbow. Yeah, that didn't go well.
I could only imagine. So, up until the point you wrestled Chief there, are there any names that you could recall having matches with that, you know, you kind of saw before your time and it didn't stood up to what you were expecting?
Oh, absolutely. Tony Atlas in Hamburg, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fantastic match. To the point where Lou Albano came to me after the match and told me it was fantastic. He thought I did really good out there. Ivan Koloff, I had a match with him, and it was almost 50-50 on TV.
Mm-hmm.
The Invaders, Mike Sharp. In fact, in the Mike Sharp match, they cut it from the West Coast tapes
Mm-hmm.
so that Mike wouldn't look bad, because I took over on him. And this was on TV,
Yeah.
which was unheard of at the time. And, you know, I don't know what Chief's problem was, but everybody else that I worked with at that time would tell me that I'm doing fantastic and keep doing it, and they would guide me through. You know, Sergeant Slaughter, I worked probably a dozen times between TV and house shows, and always had a very good match. Mass Superstar, I worked a couple of times, always had a very good match. To the point where when I went to Montreal in 1984, the Mass Superstar went to Dino Bravo and said, hey, this kid knows what he's doing. Why don't you let him have a little bit of a push? And it actually helped me in the Montreal office.
Okay. So before we get into Montreal, Sarge, going to New York, who was the person responsible for you to get the opportunity to go to New York and work for the WWF at that time?
It was Killer Kowalski.
Okay.
He got me the opening. I went down to see Gorilla Monsoon, and I talked to Vince McMahon Sr., who at the time, when I was starting, Vince Sr. still owned the office. And I talked to him and told him who I trained with, and he was pretty much impressed with what I was doing. And I would stop in and always say hello to Vince, always say hello to Gino. And they really were the two that pushed me through in WWF.
Chris?
At that time, now you said Walter gave you the break. Is that when Walter would bring a bunch of the guys up to, say, the Garden, either it was New York or Boston, or did you get the opportunity because you mentioned
Walter would bring us to the Garden, and what would happen was a lot of times we just saw the show, which was fine because I like the Boston Garden shows anyway. But a lot of times when they needed an extra person in Boston, they would call Walter and say, hey, you have one of your students that could fill in. And in my case, in 1980 or 81, whatever it was, I wrestled Hulk Hogan at the Boston Garden.
No.
Yep.
Go ahead.
You want to go on that one?
No, go ahead.
Now, is that when, on that timeline, was it when he just won the title, or was that the Iron Sheik? I can't remember. Remember hearing the story, I just don't remember which one it was.
Oh, well, this was well before Hulkamania.
Okay.
You know? Before the Iron Sheik, he was great for singing back then. Who the heck was? Oh, Bob Backlund was champion, right? Bob Backlund was still champion back then. You know, it was when you break it in like that, and you get a shot like the Boston Garden or any big arena. You got to be, you know, thanking God that you're actually in a big arena. And because a lot of times your bookings, especially when you're first starting out in WWF, you're in high schools, you're in small buildings, you're in auditoriums, and you don't get those big bookings. So I was very lucky that Vince really liked me and put me into the Boston Garden.
That's definitely great. Must have been a great experience there. And you know, now that you mentioned that, Sarge, you know, a lot of people see indie wrestling now, and they see, you know, that we do high school gyms and small venues, hockey rinks, armories and stuff like that. That used to be the B, C, and D shows for the WWF back in the day. So like you mentioned,
Exactly.
that all these
Yeah,
places
that
that
was
we
the
go
show
to
that-
now, yep.
Yeah, those were the ones that drew okay houses. You know, it's not great, but it was okay considering what it was. You know, and you went to the hockey arenas, you went to the high schools, you went to the auditoriums. Well, in WWF we never did VFW halls.
Yeah, that's a little bit. Yeah.
You know, unless it was a really big yellow lodge. Yeah, we never did that. It was always arenas and ice arenas and just big halls everywhere.
So now, going forward, you have mentioned you finally getting over to Montreal and going in that territory. Who were responsible for that, and what were some of your noticeable feuds or opponents in Montreal?
Well, when I went to Montreal, I had contacted Gino Brito. I wrestled there one time before that. Walter sent us up to do TV, and Gino remembered me from the TV. I had worked 3 matches up there and with Dino Bravo, Jacques Rougeau, and Sailor White. Sailor White was Moondog King in WWF. And they remember the beating I took from Moondog King, and that I never complained even after the match ended. I was totally crushed. The guy's like 400 pounds, and he splashed me full weight. And I never complained. I just got up, I said thank you, and I went on my way. And Gino remembered that. So they brought me back in, and I got to work with, oh my God, the Rougeau brothers. I worked with Joe LeDuc. Joe LeDuc was a huge star in Canada. Dino Bravo. Dominic Danucci was huge up there. I did a lot with Armand Rougeau, who is the third Rougeau brother that a lot of people don't know about because he got hurt about 1985 or 86 and never made the transition to WWF with his brothers. It was a good territory. I didn't understand the language, but a lot of people helped me out while I was up there. Adrian Dubois, who was a referee up there, who unfortunately passed away in a car accident. Adrian would translate for me while we were in the match. People are yelling, "Chacon!" What the hell are they saying? Oh, they're calling you a pig. So, of course, you got to react to that, right? And Montreal was fantastic for experience. Unfortunately, at the time when that happened, WWF was taking over everywhere. and Montreal was going down the tubes. But it opened up other opportunities for me.
Okay. What are some of the other territories after your run in Montreal was coming to an end that you got the opportunity to go and work for?
Well, I went to International Championship Wrestling, Mario Savoldi's office. I went there, and then I went into I was in Northeast Wrestling, which was based out of Springfield, Mass., which was a former WWF promoter who decided to start his own territory. So I got a nice big push there. Bob Backlund was the booker, and I was able to get some opportunities there. And then I went to Trans World, which was run by Afa from the Wild Samoans, and that was fantastic because that actually is where I became a main eventer on a fluke. David Schultz didn't show up. I was put in the main event, and I just did my job, and from there it went on. I went to Puerto Rico shortly after that for Carlos Colon's office, WWC, and which wasn't a long run or anything, but it was a nice opportunity to just go to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it's still on tape to this day. You could look up the match on YouTube. It's one of the matches that you always see around. It's yourself in a tag match. I believe it was Ron Shaw, your partner.
With Ron Shaw, exactly.
Yeah. Against the
The guy I
RPM.
trained with against the RPMs. Yes. Yeah, Tommy Lane and Mike Davis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarge, when you were doing the territories, did you have anybody you were either traveling with or driving with, or was it just you?
No, not really. There was a few people that, they kind of rub you the wrong way, and you just kind of steer clear of them. One being Rocky Raymond, and I'll say that right out loud, and I'll say it on a public speaker. And
Oh, we're gonna play the name game, Sarge.
the biggest piece of crap in the world. But
Tell us the
other
story.
than that,
Tell us a Rocky story.
Let's wait till the name game. We're gonna play the story.
All right.
Say the story there.
See, now you got everyone excited. Everybody out there
Hey,
like, what?
See, Sarge, he wants to bust his low. You gotta slowly get to that point, and we could swear on the show. So
I just don't want to forget it. to be
you're
honest
doing what the kids do nowadays. You're trying to give them the finish right away. We're working towards it.
well, when there's somebody that really just wrecks the hell out of you, and I've been with a lot of shady promoters over the years, and Chris Blackheart's not excluded, but
Oh, at least somebody's stuck up for me out
Sarge,
of all these episodes.
right now you're holding, and not to cut you off, right now you're holding a record because, you're the first guy to give Chris a compliment throughout all this, publicly.
Well, the problem is that people come on the show
I've been with
and they
promoters
feel that
that
they need to
gave
bury
me a
me.
check and the check bounced. And guys who told me that the check was in the mail and it never was. And even some of the more credible guys, Mario Savoldi, and I'll say that out loud too.
Mm-hmm.
I had to wait a month to get a payday for a show. Like really, you can't just do it that nice. I just did one of the biggest things you could do in the match, and I worked that duel with the Butcher. I went over, and because I went over, I wanted to get Abby over. So I asked the referee if there was a stretcher, and he said, yeah, there is. So I told Abby, drop another elbow on me, and he dropped in a second elbow, and I dropped another elbow, and he dropped another elbow, and they carried me off on a stretcher. And I had to wait a month to get the payday. I was like, are you kidding me? I just did one of the biggest jobs in the world. But, yeah, it happens.
When you were working for
We're
ICW,
surrounded by shady people, Don Vega.
Yeah,
You know this, going to the Hall of Fame.
I know there's some shady cats around. Yeah, Blackheart, you had a question?
Yeah, let me get out of the shade for this one.
Okay.
So when you were working for ICW, was that your loop coming home? Were you coming more off the road and more New England based at that time?
At that time, I was more New England based because they were more New England based. They were working with. They started with the Montreal office. Then, of course, Dino realized that Mario's Mario. And then he started working with Puerto Rico. But all the towns were here in New England. It wasn't, we didn't have to go to New Jersey. We didn't have to go to New York. That was much later in ICW. And I was already gone at that point.
All right, so you're back in New England. What year are we in now?
1985.
All right, so 85. So
they would book me they'd put me in Presque Isle, Maine, and there was another town up there was nothing but moose and women with big teeth. But it was up in the Allagash. And, I wouldn't get like Portland. I wouldn't get Lewiston. I wouldn't get Augusta. They give me these long shots. And I said, oh, can you pick up this guy and bring him with you? And when I decided to leave that office, I had actually been in Presque Isle for another office. I was driving with Pete Doherty. And I told Pete, I said, hey, I'm supposed to be in Portland at 12 o'clock for TV taping. And this was 5 o'clock in the morning. We're driving through Portland. And Pete says, the hell with them. Let's just go to Boston. I'll tell them you had to drive me home. So, sounds good to me. And we just kept right on going. Back then it was like I could quit a wrestling office in a minute and pick up one or two others right away.
Now, Sarge, throughout your experiences working different offices, working different territories, are there any territories that stand out for, the stories about worse payoffs and shady promoters? Are there any of those stories that you want to share with us? I'm just looking up that way. I'm not looking at you, Blacker.
Yeah, well, what's funny? He says that and he smiles.
Well,
but
first,
look who you've been working
Mario
for.
Savoldi is one of the worst for paydays.
Which one was that, Sarge?
The other one was this guy named Manny Miranda, who ran down on the Cape.
Mm-hmm.
He would give you checks, and sometimes the checks would clear, and sometimes they wouldn't. And then we worked with AJ Constantini in Can-Am Wrestling, and he would, if he paid you cash, you were fine. If he paid you by check, you have to make sure you have the money in your bank account to cover the check. The checks didn't always clear. AJ went to jail, and the Connecticut district attorney actually called me one time to testify against this guy because they had me advertised on at least a half dozen cards that I wasn't booked on. And I just refused to do it. At that time, I was like, I'm not, unless you're paying me to do this, I'm not doing it. And it was just a fiasco that escalated. He ended up going to jail anyway for fraud. But for the most part, when you work for AJ and you actually got paid cash, you got paid good. So why wouldn't you do it, right?
Yeah.
Making $250 a night and it's cash. I don't even have to claim this.
Yeah.
I would do that every night of the week.
Definitely a good payoff. This is still back in the mid 80s that we're talking about, right?
Exactly, right. You're looking at about 86, 87 at that point.
So do you decide that you want to take a shot at being a promoter yourself, John?
This is about 92, 93. The guy I knew was starting a promotion up. Well, we ended up at Salisbury Beach, but we were just starting in New England with New England Pro Wrestling, and he needed a booker, someone who needed know the wrestlers, know the finishes, how to put a show together. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And we started locally just in Massachusetts and then spread out to New Hampshire. We spread out to Maine. And we were doing fairly well until we went to Salisbury Beach. And we had Champs Arena at Salisbury Beach, which, anybody who's a wrestling fan would remember in '95, Champs Arena was huge. Mm. And we ran 3 shows on a weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday was the 7 o'clock show, Saturday was 7 o'clock, Sunday was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Mm. Because it's a beach, so, you want to catch the people while they're there.
Yeah.
And we were doing really well. The only problem was the guy who owned the office wasn't paying any of the bills.
Oh.
And when the bills don't get paid, as you know, everything goes under.
Mm-hmm. So that definitely that was the beginning of the end for that particular time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. He did get a few bailouts. Tony Rumble came in, a few other guys, and they tried to help him out. And at that point, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to stay here, and you're not paying any bills. We're not making any money. I got a house and a mortgage. I'll just go and do my thing, and you do whatever. And I ended up working for Jeff Costa over in AWA in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm. So you were back. You were still active at the time. You were.
Oh yeah, I was still active. When we were at Salisbury Beach, I was champion, and I was the heavyweight champion and the tag team champion. And being a booker, you're trying to find somebody else. I got to drop one of these titles. I can't keep holding 2 titles. This is nuts, right? Mm-hmm. And so I kept trying to find somebody. Okay, somebody's got to take the singles title. So I find a guy. He takes the singles title. We work the whole program. He takes the belt. 2 weeks later, he blows out his ankle. Mm. Oh, you got to be kidding me. I got to take the belt back. Okay. So I take the singles title back, and then I relinquish the tag team title, which then made a whole program to go through the summer on the tag team title. We had a tournament. We had which was really good. And one of the best things about that was that we had the Eliminators, Perry Saturn and John Cronus.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. They were part of our tag team tournament, which was fantastic. And then I went into the finals at that, and then lost. And, it popped the crowd, which was good. But it's still, when the promoters taking in the money from all these houses we're drawing, but he's not paying the bills. Yeah. What good does it do?
Yeah, definitely not cool at that point in time.
Right. John, after that, is that when you stepped away? So you are Salisbury Beach, you work for Costa, which you got to have some Costa stories. Is this when he was doing like Stingray and Hulk Hogan and?
Well, at the time of Salisbury Beach, this was '95, so a lot of the Hulkamania stuff was already calming down a little bit. Ultimate Warrior was already past his championship run. What it did, though, was it opened up a lot of opportunities because we opened up a lot of eyes at Salisbury Beach. Paul Heyman got wind of the place and came up and ran an ECW show at the arena where we ran shows. And I thought that was fantastic that Paul came in because, we had a hijacked satellite. Oh, did I say that out loud? Oh, I did. Okay. It's already out there. We had a satellite TV where we could watch ECW. And we thought, a lot of this stuff was crazy, but it was good. And he came in and he picked up Perry and John, the Eliminators, and put them into ECW. One of the other guys who worked for up there at Salisbury Beach was Scott Taylor. And everybody remember him as Scotty Too Hottie.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan Higgins, who was Knuckles Nelson, went on to be an NWA Tag Team Champion. He worked for us up there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of opportunities that came out of Salisbury, but there was a lot of problems with Salisbury.
Mm. So after that run is over, Salisbury is over, do you try to run more shows on your own, or you continue to work shows yourself, John, or you take some time off?
No, I worked for Jeff Costa over at AWA. I did whatever gimmicks they wanted me to do over there. They had me do some of the craziest stuff because Jeff was very big into carny gimmicks.
Yeah.
I was the Mummy. I did Sergeant Muldoon. Whatever he asked. I was fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, my hip was letting go. And I was having a lot of difficulty walking. And when I went to the doctor, this was in 1999, I went to see an orthopedic doctor. He took an x-ray. And he said, let me see you walk down the hall. So I walked down the hall, and I was limping. He said, I don't know how you're walking upright. You have no hip socket. The whole thing is worn out. And he showed me the x-ray.
Mm.
The entire hip ball had worn down to a stub. And obviously that was just from wrestling. And so I needed to have a hip replacement. And that just put a stop to everything.
Mm. So you at that time you go in for a hip replacement and you have to step away from the business. At what point go ahead, John.
No, I totally stepped away. Not really what I wanted to do, but what I had to do.
Mm.
And I didn't come back for 10 years.
Mm.
I was more of a consultant in those 10 years.
Yep.
Where I would go to shows and talk to promoters and say, hey, what are these guys doing? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Why, and giving them some ideas. But it was always behind the scenes. I never let anybody know I was there. In fact, I watched you over in NECW for Sheldon Goldberg over in Quincy.
Mm.
I was in the crowd, sitting right behind Sheldon, watching the matches that were going on over there, and giving him some input as to what I thought was happening in the matches. And neither Sheldon or myself ever told anybody that we were doing that.
Yeah, this is news. This is news for me. I never knew that you were down there for some of those shows, some of those tapings. Yeah.
You even saw me down in the. It was back then. The dressing room was right near the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? And the fans would come down and use the bathroom.
Yep. I got a
Right.
story. I got a story on that building, but that's for another occasion with a fan. I don't know if you recall this fan that used to go a lot to all the New England shows. He used to wear a Hogan hat backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay,
guy.
yeah.
That guy. Let's just put it out there. He punched. There's only 3 people that could clear this. One of them being Paulie Enormous. He's passed on since then. R.I.P. to him. Tonga Kid and myself. But Hogan hat punched Mike Spotter right in the face downstairs at that bathroom. That's a story
I
for
love this guy already.
that's a story for another showcase part. But continue on, John.
So, I went down to the bathroom and I saw you down there. I was going to say something. I said, no, I don't want to look like a mark. So I didn't say anything. And, I went up to Sheldon and I said, I really like this Puerto Rican team that's here. I like the whole gimmick. I like the way they work. I like what they're doing out there. And, I don't know where it went with Sheldon,
Mm-hmm.
and how much he took as to what is gospel, But I
Yeah.
think he did on some things because you had some guys who would just go out there and wouldn't look at the audience at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, what made Bruno get over? He would look at the audience. What made Randy Savage get over? He looked at the audience. What are these guys not doing? They're not looking at the audience.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting that face-to-face reaction, And maybe a few guys might have picked up on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, definitely different times now, and like I said before, now this is a good time to go into the part where you meet Chris Blackheart, and
Yeah, tell us that story, because I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Oh, my God. I get inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2011. And Joe Bruin then booked me on a card, which I thought was just an autograph session for the Hall of Famers. No, it was a show at Whole Foods in Providence,
all right,
outside
that
the
makes
parking
sense.
lot.
yep, I remember that one.
And I was supposed to work Danny Davis. And I said, well, okay, if I'm working Danny Davis, yeah, I could probably do it, no problem. Well, Danny didn't show up. So they put me in a tag match with, what the hell's his name? Danny,
Danny,
Blackout, what the heck?
it was Danny Kama.
Was it Heartthrob, Danny Cameron?
Yeah,
Danny Kama, yes.
yeah.
I was teaming with Danny Kama against Chris Blackheart and Roger Williams.
Oh man, sorry for your loss right there. But I love him.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like,
So we did the match, and then I got who was it? Derek Mulhan had contacted me and asked me about coming down to Plainville Plainville for a show they were doing down there. So for Tommy Deegan. So yeah, okay, I know Tommy. I'll come down. And I saw Blackheart again, and we started talking. And next thing I know, I'm going to showcase. But in the meantime, I meet Tony Emerald. And Tony pitched an idea to me. He said, when you do the cop gimmick, I have a cousin who does a convict gimmick. Would you want to be a tag team? Well, yeah. That seems a natural fit. A cop bringing convicts to the ring? That's perfect. And that's where it started. And we went to Blackheart and a few other promoters. And Sergeant Muldoon and the Convicts went all over the place.
So when you say Tony, that's Sensational Scott Levesque. that we're talking
Scott
about.
Levesque, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you got to manage him
I
and
cat's out of the bag on that one.
yeah. Everybody
When
knows.
he passed away.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. You know,
Mhm.
it was Scott Levesque. I had two of the best wrestlers in New England at that point. And they were fantastic in what they did, how athletic they were. They were just so good. I took them out to Pennsylvania. I took them up to Maine. All over the place. And wherever they went, the promoters loved them. It was it's an unbelievable tag team. The unfortunate thing is when Danny passed, I couldn't see going on with the Convicts, and Tony was in agreement, and we just decided, you know what, we have to end this, and we did, and then I went into ring announcing.
So
Who knew?
who knew you had the pipes to do the ring announcing? So now you're at Showcase. You're working for Showcase. You're doing the ring announcing, and behind the scenes, you're helping out and also helping out at the school. What are some of the young guys that you remember that are still going at it now that you had a hand working with at that time?
Boy, we had some kids who were really good. A.C. Cole, who I thought would be a huge star. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but AC was just fantastic. I can't say enough good things about this kid. Sammy DeLeon was a really good kid. He's now I think he's a stewardess or something.
Yeah, he works for JetBlue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, some airline. Yeah. Good enough for him, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he gets a, pickle tickled around.
Yeah. Sammy, we want our discounts. Especially
Right.
this guy right here. He likes his discounts.
Give me a jumper seat.
There's, some of the guys I can, like Carl Slavin, Nick Diamond, Scott Leder. Those guys, I can't say enough good things about them. They really dedicated themselves to the business. Chris Matrix was another one until he got hurt. That really took the business seriously, and when you showed them, okay, this is how you do this move, this is how you do this move, this is what you do, this is what makes sense, and they listened to it. And we had a bunch of guys who, all they wanted to do was super kick and suplex and just get out of here. Go work at McDonald's. Just get the hell out of here.
Yeah, we got a lot of those over time. I mean, Chris was the protector of a lot of these fly-by-night guys. I was kind of like the guy that would weed them out. But that's
Listen, I'm a firm
if they're not
believer
gonna
you
listen
give
to the
people
business,
opportunity.
the way the business is.
Yeah.
right.
Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Go do something else.
Yeah, no, so it's tough though. I mean, not everyone's going to be athletic when they walk through that door, and I'm a firm believer that they should not, lose their success because they can't do a push-up or sit-up or squat, but eventually you should be able to do more than two. So some days the natural pecking order of,
Yeah, some people are
they
late bloomers,
weed out, but other people, they're sleepers.
Well,
And then-
there's a lot of guys who got in the business and didn't do very well when they first started, and that's most of the people in wrestling. It takes you a few years before you actually get to a point where you really know what the hell's going on, But when you've been in the business for 5 or so years, you should know what the heck is going on. And you should know that, okay, sometimes I'm going to lose and sometimes I'm going to win. And if all you're going to do is Oh, I gotta lose. Oh, I don't want to do the match. Oh, I don't want to do this. Just go home. Just go home. Go watch Monday Night Raw, and dream of the star you could have been. Because you're not going to be a star.
We definitely get our fair share of guys, bitching and complaining and moping about angles and storylines and this and that and the other. That goes on to my next question. We're kind of backtracking. Did you ever got to the point where you felt entitled and secure about the opportunities that you were getting along the way?
No. I never felt that I was secure in anything that I was doing. I always felt that no matter what I was doing, I had to keep proving myself continuously, or it wasn't going to happen. A lot of times it did happen, but I never took it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
That, even when I was in, Northeast, and they gave me a push, and when I went to Trans World and they gave me a push, and I always assumed that this could turn around any minute now. I never assumed that it was going to be, I was going to be this big superstar.
So there's a little thing, Sarge, before we're getting to that time to send it home. There's a little thing that we like to play with certain people called the name game. Blackheart, I see you smiling. Do you want to get it started? All you have to do is you could say one word about this person. You could give us a brief little quick story on them.
Well, no, let's start with the easy
Okay.
one that we brought up so we don't forget, because let's bring up Rocky Raymond.
All right, Rocky Raymond's the first one.
Oh, total piece of crap. I can't even say a good thing at all. He tried to book me for a show in August, and I just blocked his phone.
Yeah.
I want to know you, asshole.
So Rocky, the first word that came out is piece of crap. Well, that's
All right.
understandable.
Go for next word.
Vince Senior.
Oh, yes, understandable, of course. No.
Vince McMahon Senior, John.
Vince Senior was a total credible guy, total class. He was the ultimate promoter, and I wish he was still alive today.
Got one?
Ricky Sexton.
What was it?
Ricky Sexton.
Oh, Jesus. Well, if I wanted to join a swingers club. Ricky was good in that when I first broke in, I traveled with Ricky a lot, setting up the rings. But, man, how X-rated can I get on this?
Oh, we could get deep, no pun intended, in this motherfucker in here.
Okay, well, he's we'll go R-rated on this. Okay, he introduced me to ring rats, and goddamn,
That was one of our topics in the podcast, John. It was rats, rat stories.
John, 80 stories.
We might have to bring you back for that one.
Pennsylvania.
if it wasn't for rats, man, I don't know that I'd survive it. But yeah.
You got another one?
I just lost it.
Chris Blackheart's always lost, John.
No.
The man that trained you, Walter Killer Kowalski.
See, okay, that's a good one.
Total class. All the time. Even when we were screwing up, Walter was more like a disappointed parent. And but I can't say enough good stuff about Walter, man. He was just the ultimate, the guy that brought you along, but also taught you about life. And, when we were screwing up, he would be disappointed, and he would talk to us about it. But he talked to you like he was your father, not like he was a trainer. Did you think you really should have done that? Well, no, probably shouldn't have. And you felt guilty about it. And you really wanted to make Walter believe that whatever you were doing was in his best interest, not necessarily your best interest.
All right, Blackheart, you got time? You got one?
Richard Burns.
Richard Burns. My God, put him with the Rocky. No, I won't put him with Rocky Raymond. Richard was an egomaniac, and Richard was, give him credit. I was a master at Tang Soo Do, and trained with Superfoot Burt Wallace and Chuck Norris. That's how good he was. I worked with Richard, I don't know how many times. Gosh. Even when I did the ninja gimmick, I worked with Richard, and we did a karate match, and he didn't kick my butt. I'm like, how'd that just happen? Richard he could be devastating when he wanted to be. He could be a nice guy when he wanted to be. Unfortunately, he passed far too young, and it is what it is.
All right. So, any last words, John, that you'd like to say to the people listening and watching? Any other old school fans? Any of the young kids that are pursuing the business now? Any last words that you want to close the show with tonight?
If anybody's listening tonight, I want you to go tomorrow to West Warwick, Rhode Island, to the Crown Plaza. I want you to go to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I want you to see Don Vega being inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, because it is one of the greatest honors you can ever have in this business, is to be put on a pedestal such as the Hall of Fame, to know that you are one of the best in this business, that you are the guy who, for whatever reason, made New England wrestling one of the greatest things in the world. At Don Vega tomorrow night, you will be inducted, and I hope there is one hell of a crowd at that induction ceremony.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you being on the show. I appreciate all the feedback over the years. There's a lot of people that I respect in this business, and you're one of them. I know that goes for Blackheart as well. We appreciate you, and we're hoping to have you back soon announcing at Showcase.
I certainly hope to be back as soon as I possibly can. I miss Showcase. I miss being with the boys. I miss being at the shows. Unfortunately, some personal things are going on, and I can't be there. But when that passes, I will be back, and I'd love to be back at the shows. I hope to see you guys soon.
We're definitely here waiting, and the boys miss you too. Chris Blackheart, any last statement?
With that being said, Sarge, we do thank you for everything you've contributed. You literally made Showcase better every time you were there. And if it makes you feel good, every time we're in Woonsocket, I yell down and say, "Hurry up, Levesque," because you, Levesque, you used to hold court down there, telling the stories to the boys.
About it with Buddy.
Yeah.
On the podcast.
So, and the only guy I think who really gets it now is Candido when I say that, and he smiles, and the other kids looking around like, Scott Levesque's not here tonight. So, with that being said, Sarge, we look to have you back soon. As you know, we're all here for you. Anything you need, you can reach out anytime. But again, thank you.
I appreciate all of that, and I appreciate the boys, and I'm hoping that, very soon we can all get together, and, even if it's not wrestling related, Everybody come over to my house again.
Yep.
We'll
That-
have a barbecue.
Definitely will do that, Sarge. Thank you very much again for being with us. Thank you, everyone watching and listening. This has been the Showcase Pod for Don Vega, the boss Chris Blackheart, and Soldier Muldoon. We'll catch you down the road.